Namaste and welcome to our Sunday edition of Gyan Ganga Words of Wisdom on our Virat Hindustan Sangam social media channels. And today we welcome you to a special edition of Gyan Ganga. The topic of today's discussion is US presidential election and a discussion on the Peter Navarro report on the election process. We have with us Dr. Subramanian Swamy, and we have two of our friends from USA. One is my friend, Mr. Ramesh Iyer from the East Coast, and we have Sree Iyer, Mr. Sree Iyer from the West Coast. As you all know, Sree Iyer is the person behind the P Guru's website, and also a lot of books he has written on various important topics concerning India, and he has a lot of patents to his credit, and his website pgurus.com is daily looked forward by a lot of people in India, and especially those who are in power and out of power, and it's trendsetter for the day. So, and Ramesh is from the from the East Coast, and he is an IT specialist. And I have my co-host, Professor Arvind Chaturvedi from New Delhi, and as usual, Dr. Swamy, our patron, president of Virat Hindustan Sangam. I thank my technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Rakesh Gadgi, Swaminathan, Ishwar Iyer, Vishal Mehta, and Tejas. I also take this opportunity to congratulate our team member Rakesh Gadgi, who got married today afternoon in Bellary in Karnataka, and I wish him a long, happy married life. And this is from the entire VHS family, and on behalf of our viewers, Rakesh has been a very important team member of our VHS team, which is behind Gyan Ganga and Words of Wisdom. So with these opening remarks, it is over to Dr. Subramanian Swamy to tell us what is this all issue all about, because we Indians are used to having election result virtually within few hours of the counting starting, and things are very straightforward. Although some of these Western countries claim to be big democratics, but we in India have proved that we are fast as far as the election results are concerned. And thanks to Dr. Swamy and his fight for VVPAT, which brought transparency in the EVMs in India, things are also safe and transparent as far as elections are concerned. But we are not sure what's happening in the US. So common man outside US is confused. Perhaps the Americans are also confused. So we have these two experts, Ramesh Swamy and Sree Iyer, to tell us more on what are these reports and what are these indicators. So over to Dr. Swamy for his expert comments and to initiate the discussion.
Well, I would I'd like to hear the two of our guests. One is, of course, a permanent guest, in fact, an anchor, Ramesh Narayan Swamy, or Swamy Ramesh, or Ramesh Swamy for short, and Sree Iyer, who I already have introduced. Now, the question basically in the minds of us Indians is that America was known as a great bastion of democracy. And you have these allegations in the largest. There have been allegations in the past. There was some kind of allegation even in 2016 and in the Bush elections. But in terms of wholesale stealing of the election, this is the first time I've seen in the United States this kind of allegations. Even the Kennedy period, there was some question about rigging in Chicago, but it was not nationwide. So what I will like to say, no matter what has happened, that look at the American system. The president makes an allegation, and the attorney general says, no, there's nothing in it. I can't imagine this happening in India. Then he goes to the Supreme Court, where he's got a majority Republicans, of which the last 3 years he's personally appointed. And they unanimously say, Republicans, Democrats together, Supreme Court, no, this is not worthy of notice, and they dismiss it immediately. And, there are Republicans also who have taken a stand against Trump, who's still the president of the United States. So America, this multipolarity of power centers is something I think I would like to, in the beginning, after we criticize America for other things, let me say that one does feel a sense of pride that democracy can work like this. I will find this very hard to see it being replicated in India in the present circumstances, although we have had during Mrs. Gandhi's time, the Allahabad High Court judge found her guilty. And that's how the whole transformation came. We had H.R. Khanna, who stood up against Mrs. Gandhi's attempt to say that even taking away life is justified in the emergency without a trial or without the due process. So we are, first of all, from whatever I've seen, we are impressed that America is a vibrant democratic society. But the nagging feeling in all of us is there is something not correct. And I don't know whether we are mistaken, but you see, we are getting reports. Now, today I saw Gingrich's statement that he doesn't trust this elections at all. I mean, he is totally with Trump on this matter. And he has been the Speaker of the House. And there's a major decision, announcement to come on the 6th of January by the House of Representatives that finally who is officially the President of the United States. So I think as the Navarro paper that Jagdish Sethi just referred to, that has a tremendous amount of documentation. I've seen other documentation. I'd just like to know from these two of you that what really happened. Why is it that in the night before, at least by Indian Standard Time, we thought Trump has won, and then woke up in the morning to find everything has changed? So how is it that such a big transformation in vote took place? And the picture we want to clarify for India, because India wishes the United States democracy well, and we think that if you are a Democrat, if you are a democratic country, we also get strength. During the emergency, I'll never forget, the Americans extended support to me when I came there. In every part, the American public came and attended our public meetings. These were conveyed to Mrs. Gandhi. Mrs. Gandhi herself told me that one of the reasons I declared the election was, of course, first reason she gave us that you came to Parliament and disappeared, which means that it was a very strong underground, and I couldn't continue in this darkness, not knowing exactly when somebody will pop up from someplace. And so she said, I thought I'll hold an election which I'll win. And then, of course, the American pressure, which she also told me it was tremendous, thanks to your campaign in the United States. So in this background, I would like to know from two of our prominent Indians who have made a name already in their own fields, of course, but also in the social media. And we would like to know what happened according to you and your scientific observation. Over to the two of you, starting with Sree Iyer, because Ramesh is, of course, been with us, so we will give second priority, not first priority. Over to you, Sree Iyer. Yeah, muted.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Not done. Go ahead.
Namaskaram, Dr. Swamy, and a big hello to VHS family. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you to share my thoughts on what just concluded in the United States of America. I must say, as an American citizen, I hang my head in shame at the mess with which this whole election has played out. But we need to understand a few ground rules. For those of you who didn't follow my previous hangout on Gyan Ganga, I just want to quickly tell you that every state will certify the election. The Secretary of State of that state certifies the election. And once that happens, it is considered done and dusted. So the January 6th meeting, where they are expecting that there could be some, magic, some overturn, we'll have to wait and see. But at this point, it is a safe bet to assume that the next president of United States on the January 20th, 2021 would be Joe Biden. Now, having said that, we have to take a look at what has played out in this election. In 2016, when there were allegations about Russian interference, there was a book written, it's a book of fiction, written about how specific counties in specific districts can be rigged to give you a totally different result. This was a book of fiction by an author called David Pepper, but that kind of gives you an idea that, whoa, it is possible to rig elections in the United States. And what we see play out, according to Dr. Peter Navarro's 36-page report, is that there was very focused, concerted attempt at rigging. This is his allegation. The problem with this whole report is that the evidence has been presented only in one case, which I'm going to share to you also at the end of this 10-slide presentation. I'm going to quickly go through these things. So Ramesh, if you could start this. Thank you. So on the column side, you have 6 states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And the rows tell you all the different observations of Dr. Peter Navarro. We should keep in mind that he is a PhD in economics from Harvard, so he comes with a lot of gravitas. So it is not someone just making a partisan view. It is an academic who has done a rigorous research. There have been criticisms of this report in Washington Post and in Forbes magazine. We should also remember that Steve Forbes is a Republican. So there has been some criticism. However, what neither of those rebuttals have been unable to prove is why that 50 people have given sworn affidavits of what irregularities they saw. In the United States, if you swear on an affidavit and then if you are proved wrong, you go to jail. If 50 people came forward and said that we found some irregularities, that carries a lot of weight. So let's take a quick look at the rows here. There were 6 different categories: outright voter fraud, ballot mishandling, contestable process fouls, equal protection clause violations, voting machine irregularities, and significant statistical anomalies. And Dr. Swamy, you will remember that the last point, the significant statistical anomalies, is what you had used as a basis for bringing the VVPAT in India. So this is something that also has happened and seen in this election. And let's take a quick look at a little bit more detail. Now, this is what played out when you said that when we went to night thinking that Trump has won, only to wake up in the morning to see the entire lead disappear. So you have 2 timelines on midnight of November 3rd, where things stood, Trump's lead stood. And afterwards, when at the time of certification, 12/15 is December 15th, at which point all these states formally certified. 14th was the drop dead date. You saw that Biden's lead Biden had significant lead in one state, but the other ones, they just scraped through. Now, if you take a look at, now this is where Peter Navarro's report gets very interesting, because here he says how much of possible illegal ballots must have taken place to make the trend go from one direction to the other direction. So if you look at the thing quickly, in Arizona, he says that there were possibly over 100,000 illegal ballots. In Georgia, over 400,000. And in Michigan, he doesn't even know. In fact, Michigan is the one case that I'm going to show at the end of this slide presentation as to what really played out. And then in Nevada, same thing. And in Pennsylvania, more than 600,000. And in Wisconsin, more than 200,000. So we have a lot of questions being asked, and not many answers are forthcoming from the Democratic side. They have essentially said, it's done, it is certified. Look, the courts have ruled against it. We're done, we're moving forward. This is the mindset of Democrats. I mean, I can understand where they are coming from. However, in my opinion, before I go to the next slide, it is, in my opinion, it's high time that United States appoint a National Election Commission. This National Election Commission would be overseeing all the elections throughout the country, and they will have their state branches, and these state branches will report to the National Election Commission, and the entire election process will have to be monitored on using a technology like the blockchain or the distributed ledger technology. That way, what happens is you have one copy with the center, one copy with the state, and you can make absolutely sure that every vote cast is that of a person who is a valid US citizen. It turns out that with the right technical elements, you can actually vote from the comfort of your home and using your phone in this case. So, and you can change your vote any number of times until the last vote before the window closes, and that will be your vote. Sir, I have said this also on Gyan Ganga before. So this is the need of the day, because you cannot have the bragging rights to be the most powerful nation on the earth and have such a sloppy election system. I'm very sorry to use harsh language, but it does feel stupid when you have to explain so many different ways in which this election is playing out. So the first allegation that came up was that there was a software called Smartmatic used in an election system called Dominion, and that this software was actually owned by elements coming out of China. In fact, somebody traced out the ownership. It said that the ownership link starts from China, goes to Iran, from there to Cuba, from there to Venezuela, and then to Panama, where they have a subsidiary, Smartmatic Panama, which ultimately owns it. So when you have so many different links to ownership, this is almost like the NDTV fraud that we had written about. Layer to try and obfuscate the truth. So this was one of the things. And why this was allowed, it is a big question. In fact, people are alleging that Mitch McConnell turned down a request, a bill, to try and allocate more funding to ensure the security of the voting machines was improved. This bill was rejected. This is a fact. So why is that? Republicans, and we also have to remember that Donald Trump has been saying right from 2017 that the electoral process is flawed, that they need to have at least a basic identification test. Also for viewers, I must tell you that only 20 states even look at your driver's license, and only 15 insist on a proper valid driver's license for identification. Some people do want you to be a citizen, but everybody takes your word. You say, okay, I'm a US citizen. You show your driver's license. They take that. They make a note of your address, the number, and then you sign, and you're done. What is alleged in Nevada is several dead people voted, that many people who are illegals also voted. And I'm going to show you a snapshot of a set of ballots where the same handwriting is being used and the same address is being used to register multiple number of voters. This all happened in Houston, where the Republicans won. So what I'm trying to say is that there has been a lot of fraud, not only in the 6 states, but also elsewhere. Now, John Ratcliffe is the director of National Investigative Agency, and he came out and gave 2 interviews. On December 3rd, he gave an interview to Wall Street Journal, and on December 17th, he gave an interview to the Epoch Times. And in both these cases, he confirmed, in fact, that there was foreign interference in the November report. And these data is available. Those of you who can go to Wall Street Journal or the Epoch Times. You can go and look at this thing. But coming from somebody of that stature, he oversees all the agencies. He is the one who is looking at the big picture, and he has made the determination that there was indeed electoral fraud. Now, after that, Trump made a statement that the voting machines may have been also breached by a SolarWinds hack. Now, those of you who happened to see that Google server shut down, I think 2 weeks ago, that was supposed to be a flaw in the SolarWinds software. And this affected practically every company that was using it. Many of the Fortune 500 were affected. So SolarWinds is a fairly popular software. And that is the other allegation that was said, that SolarWinds was hacked. In fact, the needle of suspicion points towards Russians for doing this. This is still going on. In fact, 2 days ago, it has emerged that for the past 9 months, Russia has been hacking into not just a simple company backend, but also very high secure United States government websites. So the reason for Krebs being fired evidently is that he said that there was no interference, whereas he knew evidently that the Russians had in fact hacked into American systems. So we have to see what happens to that. But Trump had no choice but to fire him. So this is the other huge story that came out in a website called Axios. There are a bunch of links that we'll be providing as part of this one. In this particular case, we are just showing the role of one particular alleged Chinese spy. Her name is Fang Fang. She came into the United States in the year 2011. She enrolled as a student in California State University in Hayward. And then from there, between 2011 to 2015, early 2015, you could see her in every political campaign. She was bringing very high value donations. Some of the people who helped themselves to her donations are Congressman Eric Swalwell from Dublin, also the current Congressman Ro Khanna, although he says that he has never met her. There are photographs of him being taken with her. So there is, suffice to say that he was also, involved in this this person reaching out to him, and a bunch of other people. Now, what has happened is that the FBI caught her in compromising positions with two Midwest mayors. One of them, it is said, it was the mayor of Ohio. But when this thing started surfacing up, she suddenly fled the country. As to why the FBI allowed her to leave is a question that only FBI can answer, because FBI had shown all these things to Eric Swalwell that, look, you have got yourself involved with a person who is possibly a Chinese spy. So the network runs deep. This is just but one example. She was actually quoting the leaders, the Democratic leaders of tomorrow, because this happened in 2011. Today, Eric Swalwell, if you remember, was front and center of the accusation against Trump that Russia helped him win in 2016. Guess what? A quick look at Eric Swalwell's funding shows that whatever he is accusing Trump of, he is also accused of the same thing. He is guilty of getting a lot of money from China. So where do you stop? The same story goes on with other people, and slowly but steadily, Trump has made a decision that between now and the time he demits office, he is going to try and drain the swamp. And there are stories that are making the rounds that a very senior Democratic congressman is under FBI custody. We still are awaiting details. This is being a complete lid has been put on this, and I'm not going to take names. I know the person and the name and everything, but at least until the official news comes out, I'm not going to make a statement. The point I'm trying to make here is most likely it's going to play out the way it has happened, and most likely Joe Biden will be the next president, but there will be a sword of Damocles hanging on his head all the time. But you stole the election. Half of the country is going to accuse him of that. Whether they say it openly or not, they're in their minds, any decision that he makes is going to be filtered, applied against that filter. I'm sorry to use harsh language here. Sometimes, finesse doesn't cut it. These days, you have to say it as you see it. Here is the example of a bunch of ballots that was taken from a Houston booth. And you will notice that it's the same Candy Street address over and over. I'm just showing you like 9, but I have the complete ballot, like 30 ballot forms, all of them, same handwriting, same address, same set of addresses, Candy Street or Wiggin Street, and so on and so forth. How is it possible for someone to have so many votes? So these are all things that are happening. That goes back to my original observation that United States needs to have a state-of-the-art election mechanism, so that nobody starts asking any more questions. This would be the first thing that Joe Biden should do in the first day of office, to appoint a central election commission. This is my wish. This is my hope. I'm hoping that many people, because Dr. Swamy is such a popular figure, they'll be watching this thing, especially from the United States. Please, we need to stop being the laughing stock of the world.
Well,
Now, sir, last one. This is just the last one. This is the findings that I'm going to share of a report done by an independent agency investigating into a specific county in Michigan called the Antrim County. And this person is giving a statement. His name is Russell James Ramsland. He's a resident of Dallas County, Texas. He has an MBA from Harvard and a political science degree from Duke. He has worked with a lot of technologies, and he, under oath, is swearing that this is what happened when the same county election numbers were run over and over. If everything is correct, the first thing you would expect is the results are the same, right? If it doesn't matter how many times you rerun the electric voting machine, the results have to be consistent. Yet you see here that the results are at variance. On November 3rd, you get one result. November 5th, a different result. November 3rd, Biden wins. November 5th, Trump wins. On November 21st, again, Trump wins. And then they did a manual count, and the manual count revealed that Trump had actually won by 4,000 votes this particular county. So this is the one proof that they have that there was something that was not right about the electronic voting machine. So this is what we have to so far. Now, what is going to happen? Most likely, everybody will just put a blanket over all this stuff and say, election is done and dusted. Let us move on. However, I, as a responsible citizen, as being an inventor with so many patents, I'm laughing at myself. Look, I have done so many important patents, so many things, and just me. There are hundreds like me. And we can't even hold a counting mechanism. We can't count 10 figures. What is this thing? So this is something that is a matter of shame for every American. I hope some sense prevails over this. I'm a little emotional because I really feel that this is a gross injustice to whoever is participating in this process. I think with this, I conclude my portion, sir. Any questions you have, please let me know.
we'll ask in the end, but right now the floor is Ramesh's.
Okay. Thank you, Sree. That was an excellent presentation. Okay. Whatever points I wrote down, you already covered, so I don't know what.
Sorry.
So, but anyway, overall, Dr. Swamy, the report, the Navarro report, has really opened up a can of worms. Okay, I mean, there is so much of information being provided. I won't say it evidence because naturally when you go evidence, it takes a different color to it. But a lot of information is packed into it, and plus the DNI report and what Sree shared about the ballots and stuff like that. Net, if everything. If the elections were just going only on the EVMs, even if there is a little bit of fraud, that Trump would have won hands down. I mean, I told you before that when the elections happened, when the count started, I told you before I went to sleep, I said Trump's going to win. But next day when I wake up and I said, what? This is completely different. So what we had anticipated, the key, the trigger that when Sree shared some information, the trigger was postal ballots. I think that in my view is the single point where the maximum fraud has happened. EVMs, I'll put it aside. I don't think the number of, there could be a fraud here and there, but not substantial. But I think where the substantial fraud is possible to happen is basically the postal ballots, because that turned the tide for Biden. Okay, so whatever fraud we see, and what is surprising is in all these things that there have been so many evidence was provided, thousands of people gave an affidavit, 50 cases. What is surprising to me is in US, not even one court took it seriously or even, allowed it to move forward. Not even one court. The second important point, I think Sree and I have discussed this before, not even one state, even a Republican state, an attorney general has taken these allegations, which have been spoken about, shared among in social media seriously, and conducted even one investigation, which is shocking. I mean, even if you look at what the last information that the Antrim County, when that sworn affidavit is so clear in terms with numbers, not even one attorney general took it upon themselves to do it. Of all, the federal attorney general, Bill Barr, didn't even care. He said there was no fraud. And plus, when the NSA director, Krebs, said that there is no EVM fraud, that kind of put the lid on all of this. Okay, so it is so shrouded in mystery that it appears to me that even Republican governors or politicians didn't want Trump to come back. This is what I personally feel, because Trump is an outlier. He's not a standard Republican. As far as they come, he just parachuted in. But he was the only guy who took a lot of action against, if you look at China, Sree presented a lot of evidence against China. I guess it was there are so many other connections that we can talk about with China, but I think China has had a severe hand in all of this. I wouldn't count in Iran because they are under severe pressure. I think Russia and China are the biggest, crooks in this whole thing, which they altered. Everybody kind of agreed that Russia altered the previous election. Now they're saying, I think it's possible that they're doing this to this. At the end of the day, US is caught with their pants down. It's shameful that a country like this, which boasts technology, security, and all those things, gets hacked left, right, and center by foreign nations. Even the recent hack by the Russian, Sree, that's the news, the biggest news running around in the Treasury and State Department. It shows how vulnerable this country has become to outside forces. In how much ever bro beats we do, or we can do chest thumping, it really is shocking to see a nation that has led the world like this being brought down to its knees. I really wish Trump had one more term, because he would have really changed the equation of China, but sadly that's not the case. Coming to Biden, he, as Sree is correct to point out, that he's under a lot of pressure. Anything that he does, he's going to say is to stole the election. He's got that shadow behind him all the time. The target for Democrats is the next 2 years, Dr. Swamy. When the representative elections happen again, they have the Democrats have lost seats. So if they lose 4 seats, it will completely tilt the balance in Republicans' favor. And as you have said, Trump has a very good chance to come back in 2024. So at this point, at the end of the day, this election is by far smoking so much with fraud that it is definitely worth investigating in every state. Because this has gone crazy. This postal ballot has created so much of chaos that it has caused so much of fraud in definite. So that's where I leave it at, because all the other points I had Sree already covered. So I have nothing more to say.
I may start by asking questions. Now, with what you have put out, it's such a prima facie convincing case. Now, why would the Attorney General, come out of his way and make the statement that there's been no rigging?
Sir, there are allegations that Bill Barr had 1.5 million stocks in Dominion Software, and that he had been paid by the Dominion Software. Allegations, no proof.
But the allegations have been made.
Yes.
And printed.
And that is why Trump wanted to fire him, and that's why he quit before Trump could fire him. So lots of activities, sir, between November 3rd and today. A lot of things happening. Trump, I think, made up his mind and said, I am going to show all these people what kind of frauds they are. I'm just trying to paraphrase. I'm trying to get into his mind and trying to answer this question. But he has determined that he is going to show all these people, which is why I also mentioned about the other FBI custody case, where the names are not coming out, but there is a lot of smoke there.
Okay. Ramesh, you want to add anything to this?
No, Dr. Swamy, the thing is, go ahead. I'll comment after you're done.
I'm done. Yeah.
He's done. I didn't interrupt him. Yeah, tell me.
So no, the thing, Dr. Swamy, is the only challenge I have, if I look at the litmus test, there is no hard evidence provided in the report, but enough smoke that it's worth an investigation. I mean, in any other country, with a decent democracy, this could have been blown up by the media, left, right, and it doesn't really matter which side of the media you're on, because this is democracy for the future. I'm looking at my daughter continuing to this. If this kind of fraud is going to happen in the US, then tomorrow even Hugo Chavez can become the president of America. That's the level to which this fraud going on here. Or Xi Jinping might be the next president of America. We can't get this done because we portray ourselves as one of the best democracies in the world, and being brought down to the knees like this, which is a complete nonsense. Even as of today, even though president-elect is Biden, we have to wait till the 6th to know that if he's really going to be the president, which is kind of a shame, as Sree put it, that in a democracy like America, where we claim technology superiority, their EVMs, one point that I want to cover was, the EVM is the biggest fraud this country is going through. Okay, they have zero idea. They know that the EVMs have been causing problems from not now Al Gore, right? I mean, even though it's hanging Chad, but things have been going back and forth on this EVM. It's still using the same technology, the same concept, and they could just learn from India and what you had brought. The simple thing, VVPAT, a voter verifiable paper trail, is simple. Easy to implement in America. One.
Yeah, because you see the vote before it falls into the box.
And there is no way to dispute it. There is no way to do fraud. And the second, obviously, Sree already covered the technology of doing blockchain and voting from the phone. And then the third part is, Doctor, what is shocking is no voter ID.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to show our firstborn and pretty much everything top to bottom of our body to get a credit card or buy a car. But we don't need to show any identification to vote, which is absolute nonsense. So if you get a loan, you pretty much have to pledge your firstborn to get a loan. But when you go for a vote, which is the most important thing, don't worry, you just come in. Whether you come shirtless or what, you don't need any ID, which is nonsense in a democracy. So if you look at contributing factors to this, if 3 have been plugged, this election would have been completely different. That's the only point that I had last. I just wanted to mention.
One more question before I move on to Jagdish and Arvind. What can I, as an Indian, take precaution now? The Russians are now junior partners of the Chinese, so they can play a Mutton Jeff show or a Laurel and Hardy show on us. See,
correct.
Or the Marx brothers. If I can pun on the word Marx.
Mm-hmm.
Marx, Marx brothers, these two ex-Marxist countries.
Correct.
What precaution should an Indian take to see that what happens in the United States didn't happen? Yes, both of you. One by one.
Start.
Yeah, sir. Today, the Election Commission in India, I think, does a manual to electronic counter check for, I think, one machine per constituency. In my opinion, that is not enough. Statistically, if you want to prove fraud, you would have to test about 10% of the EVMs, and these 10% have to be randomly selected from that particular state or whatever we take about as the unit in which the elections are being held. 10%. And the 10%, every one of those things must match. If there is a mismatch, don't run the election again. The manual, the paper printout should override the electronic count. That is the way it should be done. I think the amount of cross-checking that is being done is not enough. 10% will bring out fraud, in my opinion, sir.
Okay, Jagdish. And
so one more thing, Dr. Swamy, yes. You mentioned about what India needs to be careful about.
Yes.
The wars are not going to be on battlefields or anything anymore, Dr. Swamy. It's cyber wars. Okay, India, I don't know. I mean, based on what I read, I'm not claiming any absolute knowledge or evidence. India is very vulnerable to cyber threats, big time. And I don't see a cyber strategy or a cyber expert in the government. Maybe it's secret. It maybe it could all be confidential. I'm just still giving the benefit of doubt. But if we don't have a national strategy against cyber threats, India's every piece of infrastructure is under threat. When a State Department and Treasury in the US has been hacked, how far is India? I mean, India is so vulnerable because our babus are not that educated, not all of them. I mean, most of the babus. There could be some of you here or there that are. And our infrastructure and the very limited lack of basically public-private partnership and trust is also lacking in India, because you don't consider, there could be people like collaborating with IITs, bringing the experts in, which I don't see as evidence, because sometimes you should show your defense and saying that, hey, we are watching every move, because the rogue nations, Pakistan and people like that, they are known to keep doing these kind of jobs. Okay, so we have Israel, who's a great friend. We could befriend America more a little bit, but Israel has been solid in defending their infrastructure from cyber threats. We should, based on what you know about them, we should really enhance our cyber security infrastructure. So that's the only point you think India should take lessons from this.
Okay. Over to you, people, Jagdish and Arun.
My question to Ramesh and Sree Iyer ji is this, that India has this National Election Commission. What has prevented US? You have a first war of independence, the American independence was 1776. You have a written constitution and you claim to be a very strong democratic country. What has prevented you from having a National Election Commission all these years?
So
Ramesh, you want to take that first, because everyone I've been taking first. You take
okay,
it.
So Jagdish, I think the US is basically a federated government, because every state is independent to take is completely independent, and they have they have their own constitutions and stuff like that. The federal government can only interfere in certain things, national defense and things like that. They cannot interfere in a lot of the states, how they do conduct elections is one part of it. Every state, was one complication that maybe we didn't cover, was every state can decide how they count the votes, when they start counting the votes, how they receive the paper ballot. It is like amazing, and what voting machine they can choose or not choose, or do the methods. Everything is independent. Every state can declare, and anyway they wish to count, and when they declare, they declare. So it's completely independent. So which is the huge cause of confusion. Okay. The second thing, again, I'm against, is basically this bi-party system in this country is destroying this country, because if you do a multi-party system, the fraud might come down a little bit, because at least there are more people competing for this thing. There'll be more watchdogs. So now we have only two parties. This is my personal opinion. And of course, coming back to this EVM and thought, but the way the structure is in the US is basically the biggest impediment. Hopefully they get rid of the Electoral College in the end.
No, but let me tell you one thing. Let me share with you one thing. Presidential election and perhaps your National Senate or Congress, whatever it is known as, which is more or less the equivalent of our members of parliament, they are national elections. We also in India, many people don't know, we have state election commissioners, which conduct election. Which conduct election in India to state bodies.
Correct.
And they are independent of the National Election Commission.
Correct.
National Election Commission only looks after, India's National Election Commission looks after the presidential election, vice presidential election, the members of the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and the MLAs. And all the other state bodies look after the local elections. So it's not that we don't look after, but I think in some issues you all are quite backward, having got independence nearly 3 centuries ago.
Because we still follow a 300-year-old constitution, Jagdish ji, because it is enshrined. Sorry, Dr. Swamy, go ahead.
Frozen mind.
Yeah, because America amending the constitution is, they'd rather hang themselves than change the constitution.
Jagdish, to just add to your to Ramesh's point, when you drive out of California to say Nevada or to any other state, most likely nobody checks anything. But if you're driving back into California, you have to actually, you'll be stopped and you'll be asked, what are you bringing into California? I'm just trying to say this to say that each state has its own set of rules. For example, cars have a much higher emission standard requirement in California than everywhere else. Therefore, a car that has been driven in California has a slightly higher value outside of California, because the buyer in outside of California thinks, oh, this has been subjected to much higher emission standard, therefore this car is better. So all sorts of things like this happen. This is where the states in United States comes in, and be that as it may, I think now this is ample proof that the election system, the way we elect, has to be looked at from ground up. That is the point that I think.
Absolutely. I mean, in multiple, basically the way we conduct the elections, how the votes are counted, or how the president is selected. If you look at these three core issues, and it's not federalized in the sense that every state can decide whatever they want to do. The federal election commission or whatever, the equivalent in America, cannot audit a state election audit. They cannot. They don't have the right to do an audit unless a court does that. You have to re-audit. Only the state can do it. No external agency can audit a state declared result, which means even if it's at a presidential level, which is not the case in India, because in India, the presidential, prime minister, MP, all those elections being conducted by the Election Commission of India, it has a higher authority. The state bodies cannot object to it. They can go and file a court case, but that level is not there in the US. That's what I'm trying to say. That's where the confusion is, because every state has its own right to do whatever they want, literally.
In fact, Amit Chaturvedi will ask the next question, but I just want to tell you, you are a United States of America, but perhaps you don't qualify to be called as a nation. For nation qualifications, and India rightly qualifies to be a nation, because the Chinese in 1962 thought that one push to some states here or there, or something happened, the entire country will break up. But no, in fact, one of the advantages of India is that it may be divided into smaller states, but the whole country is united and one, unlike United States of America in a way.
I'll defend America in one case, Jagdish, because we are a 200 and 300-year-old country from a constitution and a democracy perspective. India learned a lot from others. You're a 70-year-old young democracy, so you learned a lot, including America. You learned a lot. Okay, so
we are an ancient democracy. You go to Ramayana.
We never learnt a lot. Perhaps we lent a lot. LENT.
Anyway, we'll agree to disagree on this point. I mean, we can just go back ages, but that way America didn't even exist a few centuries.
Defend your country, I'll defend my country.
No, I'm not, Dr. Swamy. I'm just saying from a point of the democracy established.
Yeah, we were
constitution
till the Mughals and the British came. Otherwise, we were democratic.
We had panchayat systems.
No, but you were not a united country, right? You were kingdoms. And I don't want to argue this point, but anyway, I don't want to digress. But I'm just saying modern democracy. That's all I'm talking.
Well, we got BBPAT and a single election commission, whereas you have all kinds of kitchen in your.
Yeah. That's the khichdi is what is making this happen, Dr. Swamy. The khichdi that we have.
We are more advanced than you.
Absolutely, I'm not disagreeing on that point. I'm not disagreeing on that point. All I'm saying is we are much old. We have not changed the core things that we're supposed to change.
Arvind?
Mr. Sree Iyer and Ramesh Swamy, you have made excellent presentation. I mean, anybody who sees this presentation, it is absolutely convincing that there has been some election fraud in US elections. I mean, election fraud term is not new to we Indians. I mean, we have seen this. Dr. Swamy mentioned about Indira Gandhi election, which was malpractice. But even when we had ballot papers, there were allegations in 70s and 80s and 90s that ballot boxes were changed between the election and the counting and all that. So it is not something which is unknown to us Indian. But we never thought that even US elections can have this kind of thing. I was reading somewhere that these kind of allegations are going on since November. When the election was on and counting was still on and no final results were declared, and billions of viewers have seen these kind of reports channel on YouTube and other social media. And I've also read one report that YouTube has removed thousands of such reports and channels, 8,000 channels or something, alleging that these are not correct. So now I don't know how long, because we are also live on YouTube. I don't know how long will this stay if YouTube has this policy of removing it. But why is it so? Why YouTube is doing it? Why YouTube is partition?
Sree?
Yes. So there is a answer in this to this question in the fact that President Trump just turned down the defense bill, because in the defense bill there was a line item to take down what is called as Section 230 of the Communications Bill of the United States. This was drafted in 1996, and that sort of gave the status to social media companies such as Google, Facebook, that they were just platforms. However, now that YouTube or Facebook or Twitter have started selectively, filtering and disseminating what they think is right, now that particular privilege must be taken away. So that is what he was expecting the defense bill to say, and the bill did not have that entry, and therefore he turned it down. Whereas everybody now, the Democrats especially, are saying, oh, Trump doesn't understand that defense cannot work without this bill. But they don't want to admit that they forgot to put in this one line of completely disbanding the 230, because what is needed is a new law that is more in compliance with the rules of 2020, not 1996. At 1996, we barely had www. We barely had a graphical interface. So things don't apply anymore. It is outdated. That needs to be changed, and they don't want to do it. So this is the underlying thing there. Hopefully something quickly will happen, and these companies will have to decide whether they want to be called media companies or just merely platform, because I don't see the platform part. I can go to any commission and I can give you my personal experiences. I have a whole slate of accounts in Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere, where I can say that this was not managed fairly.
No, in addition to what Jagdish Shetty said about the Election Commission comparing India and the US, we also have in India.
Arvind, Arvind, wait a minute. Ramesh wanted to add something to what.
No, it was more of a question back to you. Let Arvind complete, because this is a very interesting question that comes from one of the viewers. So that's why.
In addition to the machinery that we have, central machinery and the state machinery, we also have a legal provision for challenging the election. We have seen in many cases in last 30, 40 years, elections when they were challenged, maybe in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, just before the completion of the term of member of parliament. We don't have a presidential election, members of parliament. It has been that the court has set aside the election. So why can't the team of Trump or the supporters of the Trump go to different courts in different states and challenge it? In fact, we only read that in the last month, there was some intention that they will go to the court and challenge it. What happened in different courts? Is there any decision taken about these things?
All cases were thrown out.
Yes, they've been defeated in all the cases.
So
that's what I'm saying. This seems to be either a gigantic conspiracy or the evidence is not been sufficient.
Yeah, because I don't think it passed the threshold in a court of law, Dr. Swamy. That's the problem. Even though there have been thousands of affidavits, see, if the state attorney generals did their job well and they felt that there was a thing, they should have done their duty to the citizens, saying that yes, there are so many people complaining. We should do an investigation and present evidence. I mean, people at the end of the day, just going and saying thousands of affidavits, the courts are not going to listen because there is no substantiated. It's not been authenticated, validated. So it's very difficult. It won't pass the muster in the US court. So that's the challenge. There is enough evidence. No state is ready to do an investigation. Is shocking.
Yeah. See, Iyer, you want
to Good. Dr. Swamy, one question from one of the VHS members here. So they said, recently there was an article, or Prime Minister Modi said that they want one nation, one election. That is, so is that, how is that going to work, Dr. Swamy? I'm just curious.
It has worked in the past till 1967.
Okay.
We always had, except for Kerala, we because unlike the US Congress and the US Senate, in India, assemblies can be dissolved before the 5-year term is over. Parliament can be dissolved before the time is over. So the thing is that they are no more in tandem. So up till 1967, all our elections, general elections, were assembly and parliament together.
Okay.
And all lasted 5 years. Then the coalition came, and then the Congress party split, and so on. So that's how it got. Modi will never be able to get this done, unless he says that even if a party loses, Germany has a rule that if a party loses majority due to a vote of no confidence motion moved by the opposition, then they will continue to rule unless the mover of that resolution is able to create a majority to succeed the government which has lost the election. And so in Germany, many times you lost the vote of no confidence, and then you continued for 2 years and finished your term. So that would be disastrous if we do in our country, because the legitimacy factor will completely be lost. So therefore, I think the system that we have today can't be altered very much.
Okay, thank you.
Any concluding comments?
I think the key lies with the Indian voter. I think the key lies with the Indian voter. If the Indian voter sees that there is some kind of instability in the state government, and by not giving a majority support to a party, and if there is a hung assembly or hung parliament, in that case there are alternative governments, and these governments do not last for full term. And if you look at the last 2014 and 2019, it is after 35 years that a party got a clear majority in the Indian parliament. I mean, after 84. Yeah. Until last 30 years, 84 to 2014, we never had a single party winning a majority. So voter is changing, and I think voter will bring to this situation that maybe all the assembly elections and parliament elections can be together. But at least once this decision will have to be taken, that to curtail the life of some assemblies to coincide with the parliament election, which is now due in 2024.
Now I only want to say one thing. Some leaders have a habit of saying simultaneously election to parliament and assembly. But when they are in power, they could have done it. I'll give you an example. 2019, the parliament election was in 2019 May. And Maharashtra Assembly, and in the parliament, the ruling party was led by Mr. Narendra Modi, BJP. And Maharashtra Assembly was led by Mr. Devendra Fadnavis of BJP. If Mr. Modi was serious about it, he could have said to the Devendra Fadnavis government, let us have both the elections together. You advance it by 6 months. These are all popular slogans. When it comes to implementing, you cannot implement it within your own party. It's popular slogan. Yeah. As Dr. Swamy explained, if some assembly gets dissolved or you lose now what happens if Maharashtra tomorrow the present government loses a vote of no confidence? Will you wait for another 4 years for the elections to take place? It's all very popular slogans, but honestly, it's not taking place, and neither has the people a determination and will to implement these type of things. Anyway, this is nothing to do with the US presidential election, but it's part of the discussion which evolved. We got in.
One final word, if I might. Final word, if I might. The United States is always good once it realizes that there is something wrong in correcting itself. For example, after the 2001 9/11 instance, we created a new Department of Homeland Security that brought everybody together. The intelligence that was available with the FBI finally got shared with CIA and vice versa, and the NSA got much more power. I am hoping that this election opens up the eyes of everybody, bipartisan, doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter, whoever it is, that the need for a central election commission is here and now. And I hope that Joe Biden constitutes this thing and then does it the right way. There is the technology is available. It's expensive.
Plus voter ID, Sree.
Of course, I'm saying minimum you have to have US citizenship. You have to have proof of US citizenship. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any
conclude?
Thank you, Dr. Swamy.
Thank
you, Sree Iyer.
No, 1 second.
Ramesh
1 second. Dr. Swamy, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that when the Indian elections take place, please, both of you stay in India. We want to know whether the Chinese and the Russians are going to mess with it or not. and you guys are also cyber, cyber technology very well. So I think we may need you. And after hearing you today, we are convinced that you should be around here, at least as part of the VHS team, and we can make other people's life miserable. You know that we have done it already. And P Gurus has, by its publicity, put so many people on notice. I hear so many people saying that the first thing we do is read P Gurus. So I think this kind of thing is necessary in a democracy. So thank you very, very much for coming, taking off time and coming on this program and apprising us of what's happening in the United States.
It's our pleasure, Dr. Swamy.
It was our pleasure, sir. Namaskaram. Thank you very much. And I look forward to being part of this.
It was really very convincing. And I'm sure some people in the US will now take note of it. And in the future election, at least, they will be careful so that such frauds are not repeated. I mean, this could be a lesson. And as we have discussed, there are a lot of reforms needed in the United States as far as electioneering is concerned. Not only setting up an election commission, but as Ramesh Swamy said, even the introduction of ID, voter ID before voting. So these are some of the things the US can learn from India. We have discussed this the subject.
They can learn from India.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of countries can.
They can learn from. Why learn from India?
US may be ahead of India in economic terms, but in election management, there's a lot to be learned. And both these observers are welcome as a VHS observers when the election takes place in India. On this note, thank you very much, both the guest speakers, Dr. Subramanian Swamy, co-host Jagdish Shetty, and we'll be meeting again on Saturday on Nyay Gyan Ganga, and Sunday again on Words of Wisdom Gyan Ganga with a news topic, and Dr. Subramanian Swamy to bring it to the VHS viewers and the viewers all over the world. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.